Hello and welcome to Fozzie's free game reviews. I'll be reviewing a game that you can get for free right now on your PC. This week we'll be looking at Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which is free on the Epic Games Store. So, let's not hang around, let's get into the game.
You walk toward the house, hearing the sounds of laughter and talk as you reach the door and push it open. You sit down and join the game. It's a cheap buy-in, and not many of the other players are very good. One by one, the other players leave the table, sometimes with pique or with wry humor, leaving their winnings with you or the man in gray. Finally, it's just you and the man in gray. He looks at you, full of humor, and winks. Last hand? He deals, you draw, and look at your hand. It's good. It's great. The best hand, in fact. A royal straight flush. Spades. Aces high. But the man in gray pushes forward his whole pile. You're not sure exactly. The man in gray stops you. Now, if you like, I'll let you wager your word. I know you'll be good for it. Just promise you'll pay the debt, however I ask. Yep, 10, jack, queen, king, ace. All spades. The man in gray smiles. All right, then. I'll call.
Well, your luck wasn't so good, was it? That's quite the hand, but not for the game we're playing. I'm afraid you owe me. Your life, sure, but more than that. Your labor. You see, this land is built on stories. It's one big story, this country, woven of many small ones. Few of the small ones are strictly true, and the big story is mostly a lie. All the stories and songs and myths and legends start somewhere, with a seed. As they're told and retold and passed around, they grow and change to become the stories we know. To pay your debt to me, you'll be carrying stories. Finding the seeds first and then spreading them, telling them onwards so they can begin gaining strength. This is no light task. Stories are heavy. Most of the stories you'll find will be small seeds. They might be true, but they'll grow wild and unbelievable with the telling. The more important stories are the true ones. The ones people will tell you about their own lives. Those often get lost in the weaves of the big story. The more true stories you can find and tell, the more you can weave that truth into the big story. Tarnish it a bit perhaps, but isn't a dingy and battered truth better than a shining lie? Now, go ahead. You tell me a story. I'll trade you some information about your task. Travel? That's your job. Wander from place to place, gather those stories and spread them. People get bored hearing the same stories over and over, but an old cliché in one state might be a rip-roaring new yarn in another. Go on your way, Seeker. Maybe we'll meet again, or maybe not. Either way, it'll be an experience for you. I'm jealous in some ways. I hope you find what you're looking for.
As we can tell from the intro, this game is all about stories, so there's going to be a lot of talking. Once we get into the game, it seems like it's pretty much going from point to point to pick up stories, but we'll see if there's any more gameplay involved as we get later into it.
This bungalow is being ransacked. There's furniture piled in the front yard, ammunition heaped under the mailbox, and a crowd of clean-cut men ripping apart a car in the driveway. The two heavily armed, mud-caked women leaning over the porch railing share the same bored grin. One shouts at you. "Lend a couple innocent gals a cigarette?" You are about to hand her a smoke when those men draw pistols and shove you hard into the dirt. "You know these girls?" they demand. Once they've dumped your bag out into the road, they decide you're harmless. "If you were selling booze too, you'd have a lot more cash," sneers one. On the porch behind him, the two bootleggers are fingering their empty rifles, grinning in disappointment.
For a game about stories, the actual story seems pretty simple. Your character has been tricked into selling his soul, and now he has to go and collect stories. It'll be interesting to see how this develops, and if we get any more information about the character.
Off the road and into the woods, you can't help but come across this package by the old tree tied to a sturdy stick. The cloth wrapping conceals, though not particularly well, something large and softly unsettled. Little eyes blink back at you from inside the bundle. The shape gives a start.
"Please don't tell my pa that I'm in here.
It says in a small voice.
Pa doesn't want to live with us anymore, but I want to go with him. Don't tell him, please. I'm high."
His father must have been here at some point, but you sure can't see him now,
"Please go. He's coming back any minute.
says the boy, growing agitated.
He's going to see you talking to me. Please, go!"
He only calms down when you leave. You don't see another soul for miles.
The whole game is based about stories, so the actual gameplay seems pretty simplified. The movement is pretty simple and easy to do. Camera angles sometimes go off a little bit. They've got an idea to use whistling to speed up the walk, but I find it quite hard to execute. I'm not sure if you get that more with practice, if it will be better. But in general, it's pretty simple, and it just means that you get into the story, which is what the game is really trying to get you into.
woman walks the small town square with the poise of Betty Davis. A confident stride and inimitable mannerisms elevating the sidewalk into a plush Hollywood carpet. And wrapped around her neck, a yellow velvet ribbon, bright as an ocean sunrise. You question a well-dressed man parked outside an oyster house. Prudish woman. I took her on a fine date and she didn't remove so much as a ribbon. Excuse me, can you step back from the coupe? That's the spirit. You decide to seek a second opinion. You talk with a waitress smoking outside a diner. Something funny about her. Just showed up one day. Doesn't work, doesn't live anywhere far as I know. Just around. Myself, I'd love to know who made all her beautiful clothes. You ask the woman if you may join her at a public bench. You may. Lovely outside, isn't it? Her eyes are a beautiful shade of brown. Beneath the yellow ribbon, a thick, fibrous scar wraps around her throat. Weather like this, it reminds me of Paris. You can see storm clouds on the horizon, and you don't relish the thought of being caught wandering this rocky seaside road in the rain. Fortunately, you find the lighthouse door open, with a daunting staircase before you. At the top of an ornate wrought iron spiral, you're breathless and feeling the strain on your knees. Rain already batters the walls outside. You can only knock on a heavy wooden door leading into the upper level. Muffled voices and light seep in beneath the door. Looks like we got a visitor. Sounds like a man's voice, deep and rough. Well, behave yourself. I'll open the door. Another man, this one with a higher, more sonorous voice. I always behave myself. He feigns indignation, but his tone betrays affection instead. After a moment, the door unlatches from the inside and opens. The man before you is tall and muscular, with a hint of a paunch beneath his wide chest. The heavy iron knob on the door looks nearly dainty in his huge hand. Didn't want to be out in this rain, did you? Come in. Despite the rough exterior, this room looks like a well-appointed parlor. There's a rug on the well-trod wooden floor and an enormously plush couch. And sat upon it is a stocky fellow grinning through a great hazel-colored beard. Tea? He offers, hoisting a teapot. A few years. The tall one sits on the sofa, wrapping his arm casually around the other lighthouse keeper. 5, says the smaller, but by no means small, man. That long? Time flies. We traveled together before that. You must have some good stories from the road, huh? You wake up the next morning on their old sofa, still warm from an excess of tea. And cakes? There might have been little cakes. Prodigious snoring rumbles in from the floor above you, and you quietly take your leave.
I really like the graphics of this. They're very stylized and they really suit that Western drifter aesthetic, you know, that culture of being on the road. And it's pretty simple. The layout really draws you into the world because you can just get into it straight away. You don't have a complex layout.
This city is like no other you've been to. Crooked streets splay out in a maze of narrow passages, no two alike. Soon, you find yourself in twilight, utterly lost. Bright light crests around one corner, a car approaching. Unable to afford rescue, you keep walking. The asphalt turns to crooked cobblestones that threaten to wrench your ankle out of place. Was this always a moonless night? The stars multiply, each one looking like a pinprick through which light is exiting the terrestrial world. It's hard finding your way through in pitch darkness. You go by touch and sound, feeling the scale of the streets by the echoing of your footsteps, fingers tracing the rough surface of the buildings. And then, a rumble of noise in the distance. You quiet yourself, suddenly fearful. The clear sky tells you it's not thunder, but cannon fire. The city comes alive with fires and shouting. You find yourself trampled by a mob of men in thick brown coats, a phalanx of bayonets advancing up the street. When you come to, there's no sign of the commotion, the war that you were just caught in. The comically shrill honk of a Model A running up the road startles you, and you crawl toward the sidewalk. Above, the sky is a sharp, cold, cloudless blue.
Overall, this game has a very unique look and style. I think if you like a narrative-driven game, this has a lot to offer, and there's a lot of variety in so much as you're going around different places and talking to different people, and a lot of replay where you come back and forth, try to tell different stories to different people. So yeah, I think this is definitely one for people who like a narrative game.
Hey there, stranger. You're welcome to enjoy this fire with me, if you're respectful, that is. This here is my spot, and I ain't inclined to share it with any bad characters. You can call me Quinn. These here are my venturing companions. Cass is the big un, and the one with the spots is Flip. I usually beat my way on the rails, but the road news said this town was fat, and the weather was fine. So I'm taking in the sights and seeing what I can drum up. Hey, do you got any really thrilling stories to tell? I'm hankering for one of those. Well, that was a lively tale. Authority, bosses and such. I ain't nobody's little Angelina, if that's what you're asking. I take care of myself and my dogs. I don't need no jocker looking out for me, so if you're offering, don't. Shoot, I thought I told you to be respectful. You want to keep enjoying my spot or not? Think about, hey, tell me one of those exciting stories. Well, that sure was a downer. Give me a good venture tale instead any day. Freedom. Well, teacher used to talk about freedom like America was eat up with it, but the tramping kind seems to be just about the only real freedom still in supply. Ain't no freedom from an empty stomach or bad weather, unless you're rich. Hey, tell me a funny story. You seem like you still got a sense of humor. I don't get too much out of tales that are so cheerful. Not enough excitement for me. My family. There ain't no way I'm gonna start jaw-flapping about those bastards. Judases, the lot of them. Well, night's over. I think I'll see what's happening up the road this way. Didn't understand all your stories, but I'd gladly listen to more if I see you again. The tramping life suits me just fine. Every day, with things being so depressed, folks walk around like it's the end of everything good. But plenty nice things to see if and you know where to look.
There you have it. That was Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. Now you've heard my thoughts on the game, but I'd like to hear what you think about it. So please leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of the game. If you liked this review, please follow the channel. Leave a like, that would be fantastic. If you also want to follow me on Twitter or Twitch, the links are down below. And once again, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you next time.